Welcome to the World Financial Symposium's Market Spotlight webcast series. Today's conference will start in a moment. The WFS is dedicated to educating technology leaders through webcasts like these and the Growth and Exit Strategies Conference Series held in London, New York, Silicon Valley, and other tech and financial centers around the world. The speakers and sponsors of these live events read like a who's who of industry leaders. To learn more about our live events for CEOs, owners, and investors, or to access our library of on-demand Spotlight webcasts covering markets like IT security, health tech, gaming, and more, please visit WFS.com. And now, let's join today's Market Spotlight webcast.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Spotlight on Artificial Intelligence M&A, co-hosted by the World Financial Symposium and the Quorum Group. This is Ivan Ruzic, Vice President of Mergers and Acquisitions at the Quorum Group. I'll be the moderator today as we examine M&A trends as they relate to artificial intelligence and associated technologies. Through a research report, a panel discussion, and hopefully we'll also have some time for a Q&A session at the end. If you've got questions, please feel free to enter them as we go along, and we'll try to come back to them as we're able. AI has been a serious interest of mine for several decades, starting in the mid-1980s when, as an academic, I developed some of the earliest rule-based systems. I've been involved with different aspects of AI ever since, and of course the technology has evolved enormously during that time. Massive leaps in processing power, storage, and connectivity, coupled with spectacular decreases in the associated costs, have enabled advances unthinkable only 10 years ago. Of equal, if not greater significance, has been the explosive growth in the quantity and availability of digital data to drive our machine learning algorithms, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on today. Machines powered by AI perform many sophisticated tasks today. For example, recognizing complex patterns, synthesizing information, drawing conclusions, and forecasting. Now, these are capabilities that not long ago we all assumed required human cognition. Therefore, the disruptive potential of AI is simply enormous. For example, it's been estimated that AI will impact almost every single aspect of the $100 billion cybersecurity market. It'll be the major driver of autonomous vehicles, and pardon the pun, as well as image recognition, language processing, and predictive analytics. In all, in excess of a $230 billion disruptive opportunity in just these markets alone, and all projected within the next decade. This obviously has significant implications for M&A, and companies with AI technology have been in high demand as a result. Now, Quorum's been involved in technology M&A for over 30 years and has sold more information technology companies than anyone in the world. This has included a number of AI-related firms. A few recent such transactions have included AI-based social media engagement with the sale of Digital Roots, natural language processing with the LingoSpot and Astute Solutions, machine vision systems with OlaWorks, and going way back to one of Quorum's earliest clients, Brightstar Technology. Brightstar was founded by Quorum's now Executive Vice President of Research and Technology, Ilan Gaspar, who I'm happy to say is going to be joining me for today's webcast. Ilan is a well-known innovator and expert with multiple patents in the intersecting AI, language processing, and speech fields, including speech-to-text and text-to-speech, conversation processing, and machine learning. His experience in the field even predates me and goes back to the early 1970s. Ilan is now going to walk us through the AI M&A landscape, starting with some historical context. So over to you, Ilan.
Thanks, Ivan. Some background before we examine specific deals. AI technology has a long history rooted, like me, in the 1950s, when it began growing with early exuberance, then almost froze in place as a long AI winter began in the 1970s, only slowly thawing till the latest round of breakthroughs that mark our present day, when, thanks to deep learning and other innovations arriving this decade, the AI field's making a spectacular transition to a new phase of practical applications and growth, with projections for its annual global market of direct and enabled revenue arenas 8 years from now approaching $100 billion, at a combined CAGR of well over 50%, driving companies to pump from 26 to 39 billion into the field last year alone. Tech giants such Baidu, Google, accounting for most of it, all pursuing a value chain McKinsey categorizes as ranging across 4 Ps, from smarter project forecasting to production optimization, targeted promotion, and providing enhanced user experiences. Examining the funding picture more closely, that corporate spend appears to divide roughly into 90% spent internally, with the faster-growing 10% deployed for AI-related acquisitions, setting up a classic wave of M&A demand as the competition heats up faster and broader than companies at any stage can address through organic growth. From our vantage point at Quorum, where we track emerging tech M&A trends, we noticed that demand wave underlying several of our top 10 tech trends, and so we elevated it into one we call AI enablement, which is focused on machine learning feedback loops, and it became our number 1 a couple years ago. AI is now overlaying aspects of all these trends, most directly visual intelligence systems, disrupting such industries as automotive, healthcare, and security. Turning now to M&A proper, AI over the last 5 years shows a classic wave developing with steady escalation in volume and deal values crossing into the multi-billion range last year, topped by the 15 that Intel paid for Mobileye. In North America, particularly Silicon Valley, through most of the related transactions, sellers outnumbered buyers in Europe, with Israeli acquirers driving the reverse in the Mideast. Asia was roughly even and also home to 2 of the most vibrant AI ecosystems. Top buyers include many tech giants jockeying for position. Note the very top buyers, the giants on the left, addressing base AI, while on the right, smaller or more specialized companies like Spotify pursuing ways to extend their own application feedback loops, or PEs like Vista doing bolt-ons to individual portfolio companies for the same effect. Calling out some recent deal examples we selected this year, starting at the right, Microsoft, top AI acquirer since 2015, paid a reported $100 million for Israeli attack investigation specialist Exadite, fold its AI-powered tools into Windows devices. One of AI's principal advantages is shortened response time, taking humans out of the loop, at least temporarily, while queuing suspicious actions for more review at a more leisurely human pace. Next comes Salesforce, which spent $110 million and 22 times revenue for smart data discovery, company BeyondCorp, to boost its enterprise analytics offerings, combining it with previous acquisitions, MetaMind and Prediction.io as part of the Salesforce Einstein effort. IBM acquired Denver-based Alchemy API, which leverages NLP in building AI-enabled apps and also brings the visual intelligence systems to Watson Core AI in a deal the Watson VP called a leather shoe fit. That's the kind of situation you can get best value from, where your strengths as a seller match the acquirer's needs. Intel did one of the largest deals this year, grabbing Israeli digital vision technology company Mobileye for over $15 billion, looking ahead to the autonomous car industry, and aside to rivals like NVIDIA and Qualcomm. The autonomous vehicle is likely to be the most starkly visible change to people's everyday lives enabled by AI. But there are others. Spotify has been on a shopping spree to build up its customer base and reinforce its recommendation engines through AI development. A year ago, the Swedish music streaming company picked up subscriber analytics firm Preact for its expertise in behavioral science. Then Spotify went for England's audio detection startup Sonalytic, New York-based Mighty TV, which applies AI to help consumers discover video content. Its most recent was Paris-based machine learning startup Nyland. Over in the manufacturing space, machine vision firm Cognex snapped up Swiss deep learning specialist FIDE to enrich its image analysis capabilities and hone its competitive edge in the industrial machine vision market. eBay also picked up a handful of AI companies, including Sweden's expert maker, in an attempt to enrich its marketplace platform with machine learning, followed by acquisition of Israeli visual search specialist Corrigan, all as it tries to fend off competition from Amazon. Business applications industry veteran Progress Software spent $30 million for Data RPM for its machine learning-based maintenance solutions for the industrial Internet of Things, IoT. We also saw M&A on the conversational intelligence side as the enterprise looks to imitate the popularity of Siri and Alexa in a business setting. MindMeld, which helps to develop AI-powered conversational interfaces, was nabbed by Cisco for $125 million. Moving back to the security space, behavioral attack detection firm LightCyber was picked up for $105 million, 21 times sales, by network security veteran Palo Alto Networks to apply its automated behavioral analytics for more visibility into targeted threats. Predictive sales analytics firm DX Continuum was acquired by ServiceNow, seeking to apply machine learning across its cloud solution set, automating manual work requests. Finally, early this year, Samsung closed its purchase of Viv Labs for a reported $215 million. Viv, a natural language processing startup from the creators of Siri, was purchased by Samsung to enrich the tech giant's AI-based open ecosystem, as it looks to keep up with major AIs, Apple and Amazon in particular. The strategic value of acquisitions in this field is emphasized by the high multiples which many sellers have been experiencing, particularly for machine learning technology. As the market evolves, we expect the AI adoption expand to encompass a wider range of companies at earlier stages, and then the AI M&A wave disperses, as they all do. In the meantime, there's a window of opportunity for both innovators, those who have developed enabling technologies for AI, and early adopters, those who have applied AI to better enable their particular, often vertical fields of business and feedback loops to align with the AI enablement trend and catch the wave. Back to you, Ivan.
Thanks, Elon. You know, since 2012, well over 250 companies in the artificial intelligence domain have been acquired, and over half of these have been in the last 2 years. And now, as we've seen, many tech giants, including Microsoft, Salesforce, IBM, and Samsung, have all been active acquirers. And as Elon mentioned, some of these acquisitions have been very large deals indeed. So what is it these companies know that the rest of the world doesn't just yet? Recently, I had a chance to sit down with a pair of people who have thought deeply about these issues. One, an active buyer, and the other, an AI implementer. Now, Tim Cascio is a director on the Samsung Next M&A team based in New York City. He focuses on software and services companies around the world, particularly in the areas of artificial intelligence, payment technologies, and content services. So Tim's perspective is that of a buyer. Jiren Parikh is the CEO of Ghost Robotics. Ghost teaches legged robots to walk, avoid obstacles, and even climb fences. Jiren's applications represent the state-of-the-art in one of the main AI growth areas, and that's robotic vision and image recognition. So Jiren's perspective is that of a potential seller. Now let's go to that conversation now, and then we'll bring back Elon for some further discussion.
Tim, please describe for us the role that Samsung sees for artificial intelligence in its future. Specifically, what does your organization hope to achieve through these acquisitions?
AI is a fundamental building block for all the experiences we're creating for our users. It's not a product in itself. It's an enabler to make the things that they do easier, more efficient, quicker, and create a better experience all around, not just with that individual device, but with all the devices that I'm interacting with on a daily basis.
Thanks, Tim. Jiren, your company does some very sophisticated, purpose-specific AI processing. Talk to us a bit about that. What are the tasks you're tackling, and how does AI play into that?
Thanks, Ivan. So Ghost is unique in the sense that our AI applications, or any machine learning or deep learning components that we use, are very, very specific to what we do, which is legged robots. And so we're designing the kind of next iteration or design model of a legged robot that's very software driven. And so in our case, for example, we don't use springs, hydraulics, and so forth to make our robot work in the real world, and it's all software, and we call that 100% software compliance. So how does a robot like ours, without sensors, locomote up a curve or slip on the ice and correct itself and then move forward? And that's really based around these machine learning models that are very basic, but also getting deep learning models and having these robots locomote over any type of unstructured terrain. And so fairly complex stuff. And for us, we simply can't even have a legged robot company without actually tackling these problems to make it do even a basic thing like locomote over unstructured terrain or walk over upstairs.
Thank you,
Jiren. We've seen a recent buying spree in AI acquisitions. Do you see these as indications of an AI bubble, or do you see this as a more or less permanent part of the landscape? What do you think, Tim?
I think you've seen a buying spree because the core building blocks of AI have now matured to a point that makes it usable for a multitude of applications, and those core building blocks are around connectivity and processing power. I don't think it indicates a bubble. I think it will be a steady state. Applications are going to be built in the future, and today you have applications that are mobile enabled. Going forward, all applications will have some component of AI or machine learning integrated into them. So I think you'll see continued acquisition activity both in the core building blocks of machine learning and AI, but also in the applications that are being built on top of it.
Jiren, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as we've worked together for many years, Ivan, we've seen this cycle in other tech spaces. There's a lot of generalists out there, the folks that are the first movers, and I certainly think we're at that point. Not a bubble, but they're just going to get acquired. There's a lot of headcount and expertise that comes with it. So, typically, you buy these companies that it may be a AI or a deep learning or machine learning problem that's in a specific area that may not even be directly related to your organization, but certainly you can retrain those folks, and capturing, that talent pool is absolutely critical. So not a bubble, but probably the right thing to do where they all get snatched up. I think the next phase is really where you have task-specific companies, folks like us that are focused on, a legged device. And we talked about locomotion, but even more complex problems is we have a robot that's out in a mine and walking over unstructured terrain, a muddy field in Brazil, and it works great when the sun is shining. What happens when you have particulate matter in the atmosphere, fog, or there's actually a blemish on the actual lens of the camera? This stuff is very, very tricky. So I think folks like us and hundreds of other companies that are working on these very specific tasks and solving them, they'll continue to provide opportunities for larger companies, but again, probably those that are very focused.
Thank you. Small, innovative companies that are focused on one of the major areas, and we've already just touched on this briefly, namely machine learning, are forecast to be the top acquisition targets in 2018. In fact, by some measures, 2/3 of all AI acquisitions since 2012 have been in machine learning. We see interest from chip manufacturers such as Intel, software firms such as Oracle, and the automobile industry all showing interest. Why is machine learning such a hot M&A target?
I mean, I think from our standpoint, it's a subset of AI, and it's fairly simple, right? Teach it to do something and replicate it. Deep learning is a far more difficult challenge. So even in our case, we try to work with other companies that have deep learning models and expertise.
Tim, what's your view?
I agree with Jiren. The interest in a lot of AI companies and the acquisition activity that you've seen is really to allow larger companies to acquire the expertise and the building blocks that can be applied, the different applications that they're engaged in. When I think of AI, machine learning is a subset of it, but ultimately machine learning infuses everything people will refer to as AI. When you think of things around computer vision, when you think around personalization and recommendation, they'll have some component of machine learning. And so I think you'll start to see two different types of acquisitions or two different profiles of companies that are being acquired. One will be companies that keep providing the foundational backbone for whatever the application is, but more and more I think you'll see companies that have machine learning experts working with their product people to solve specific tasks, specific applications that will meet the need of the acquirer.
Interesting. That lines up much with what we're seeing also. A handful of companies, including Google, IBM, Intel, and Microsoft, have dominated artificial intelligence M&A over the past few years and are accumulating an impressive pool of AI talent, as we've discussed, and also an extensive collection of patents and other intellectual property. Now, are these companies more motivated to play catch-up or just able to outbid competitors or trying to corner the next-gen AI market? Or, tying back to my initial questions, what do they know that the rest of the world does not? Tim?
I think with all the companies that you've mentioned, and hopefully Samsung will be included in that list, is that they touch a bunch of different applications and they touch a bunch of different customer verticals. And so they can apply the machine learning and AI across those verticals. So I think larger companies, by their very nature, will be more active in this space because there's more places that they can apply the expertise and the technology.
Thanks for that. Jiren.
Yeah, certainly agree with Tim here. If I'm a large corporation, I've got so many divisions and business units pumping out all sorts of technology. It's pretty clear now that ML, machine learning, any type of artificial intelligence application development is going to be, impervious throughout all tech that's being shipped down the road, consumer products, industrial enterprise products. And so if we can gather that talent fast enough, I think it ultimately makes sense, regardless of whether that you've got a hit on a winner or you got a win or a loss hit on a specific acquisition. It just makes sense to me as a larger company. Of course, smaller guys like us, we think about, every single resource that we're hiring or we're exposing to a specific project. So we're always concerned, and I'm assuming mid-market companies will be a lot more streamlined and focused in what they're acquiring. It's probably going to be a specific application versus, kind of a talent pool that can be spread across the entire organization.
Following on from that, Jiren, it was recently predicted that in a few years, no investors will be looking to explicitly fund AI startups because everyone will just assume that all of these companies are already using the best available AI techniques to address the problems they're solving. In other words, software without AI will be unthinkable. Now, at what point do you think corporate buyers will react the same way?
They said that about, social networks here, right? After a while, socialization will be the, kind of the fabric within all, consumer products and services. And you can certainly see that happening now. Nobody's funding a new Facebook, which is fairly obvious. We saw that in the photo space, photography and digital imaging space when we worked together. And, we see that in robotics as well, that these things are fairly complex today. Next thing you know, everybody is going to have some basic knowledge level of that, a top-notch, tier one engineering player that you hire. And certainly as you build a team of top-notch technologists, it becomes pervasive throughout everything that you do in your technology. So, for example, in robotics, even 2 years ago, when Gavin Avik started Ghost, very difficult to find the talent to build their vision. Now, we've got a team of 8, and not to say it was, as simple as pie, but virtually every engineer we hire, whether they're doing behavioral locomotion research, electronics, or even mechanical engineering, they all have a little bit of knowledge around artificial intelligence. So I totally agree that it becomes a part of the fabric of everything we do.
Tim, do you agree?
I don't know if I fully agree with the premise that investors will stop funding AI startups or that acquirers will not look to acquire companies that are focused on AI. Like I mentioned previously, once the core fundamental building blocks are in place, it does become more of an everyday occurrence, and the focus may shift more to the application of that technology, but there will continue to be development and new techniques and new approaches to those underlying building blocks. So maybe the profile of the companies that are getting acquired or raising money changes slightly, but I don't think it's binary, one or the other.
Following on from that, Tim, what advice would you give an AI entrepreneur today just starting down the path of commercializing the latest and greatest AI technology and who wants to proactively manage his or her company for a successful exit a few years down the road?
I think it's very similar to what I would tell anyone starting a company that is based on technology. You need to have the best technology, and you need to focus on getting that right. But equally, you need to think about how that technology will be applied to both the end users and how the potential acquirers are going to apply the technology. We see a lot of companies that have brilliant people doing really amazing things, but if there's not a place we can apply it, to either our products or new products we may introduce in the future, it becomes very difficult to justify acquiring the company. And so I tell most founders that I'm talking to when they ask that question is that in the beginning, start to think about how the technology will be applied and ultimately how it will be monetized. And as you move down the path of developing the technology, that might change. You might even pivot. But it's always critical to keep in mind what the end objective will be, because technology for technology's sake will be less interesting than technology that has a real-world application and that's solving problems.
Thanks, Tim. And what do you think, Jeroen?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think specialization is key. If you could identify, and when I met Gavin Navik, it's the same advice I gave them was, they wanted to build this next generation legged robot, find a problem that a larger company or a well-known company, in our case of Boston Dynamics or Andover Robotics, couldn't do well. We identify those segments and then really use, our software, electronics, our artificial AI, intelligence, and make that solution better, right? I think it's still the same old age-old problem. There's a lot of money out there, but, there's a lot of money for solutions, not for science projects.
Excellent. That brings us to the end of our session. Thank you both for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and your experience.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you, Ivan.
Okay. Let's now turn back to you. Excuse me. One thing we alluded to with the panel was this question of AI enablement. There's something we've thought about a lot at Quorum. Can you talk a bit about that, please?
Sure. Thanks, Ivan. As I mentioned, the essence of AI and the bulk of its disruptive applications fall within machine learning, where the feed-forward neural net breakthroughs, commonly known as deep learning, opened the floodgates this decade. Efficient, independent learning, machine or human, employs a feedback loop with problem cases, producing solutions, and an evaluation of those solutions leading to better solutions next time around. The action revolves around that feedback loop. Control of any part of it is a resource of value to enable AI, that is, to make smarter systems and enable the systems to function better. These are the two sides of the AI enablement trend.
And so what does that mean for tech companies, even those that may not be building out AI technology themselves today?
Well, in the M&A context, the large companies have been gathering up those parts that I mentioned, prioritizing working feedback loops in the big ones first: search, language, images, speech, those domains, or parts that match what they've already got in order to build those out. Most of the major AI players now have large dynamic data sets for these domains and platforms that use cutting-edge techniques. Many are opening those platforms to free or freemium use. just to get the benefit of any other data run through them that'll make them smarter. They're hungry to learn from more cases. So value now lies in cases where the data hasn't been fed to one yet. If you have a loop or even access to a storehouse of such still hidden data, unavailable yet to the big companies, you have an asset that can be developed to enable AI. And you have a case where AI can enable your business to reach more optimal performance. Again, this two-sided AI enablement trend. So you should be strategizing how to extract the value of that data and apply it soon, because similar ones are educating AIs now, and as they get closer to yours, more and more similar to yours, the value fades. The less unique and defensible yours is, the more urgently you need to act. Like always, this kind of value is fleeting. It's ephemeral, the way it always is in an M&A wave.
So, Elon, what's your advice for the CEOs on the call who are looking at what's happening in AI, both technologically and in terms of M&A, and wondering which way to jump?
Well, much like SaaS, AI will become part of most tech value propositions and or delivery advantage. But in a change this broad, most temporary advantages, again, are fleeting. Most of the major AIs' hunger for data, for instance, is becoming sated. They're digesting the main course, if you will, but might be interested in dessert. So if you have any of these three assets that create a learning loop, data, tech, or feedback system, you must strategize. You need to apply AI to enable your business, or you must apply your business to enable AI.
Can you give me some examples, Elon?
So, sure, go back to those three components: data, tech, and system, and take inventory of what you have to begin with to strategize. For instance, you have a unique data source. You have a unique data source. Is it one that some AI already learned from? That would be of less value. Is it one that no one has learned from yet? That's a much more valuable piece of inventory. Why has no one learned from it yet? Is it because nobody found it yet? Is it because it's your captive through access or IP, or is it because you can handle it better, characterize, and work through the pluses and minuses of what you've got in terms of the three things, okay? And that was data. So the next one would be if you have a tech. If you have an AI tech yourself, first off, you want to know how it relates to the current state of the art of deep learning. If it's a variety of that, maybe like Jiren mentioned, tailored to a specific situation, legged robotics in the case of Ghost Robotics there. That's a particular type of asset. Or maybe you've got one that can enhance deep learning more generally. Maybe you're definitely going to have to look at, do you have one that's better or worse than deep learning? If you've got one that's better than deep learning, you have a whole, you have quite something on your hands. If you've got one that's worse than deep learning, you have a far more ephemeral opportunity here to, you're in the kind of legacy position. If you've got finally, the third piece would be a feedback system. Okay, so do you have a relevant current application or a relationship set? Does it already make a feedback loop? There's value there. Could it make one? But it needs something that you can build or that you can access in some other way. There's an input to your strategy that maybe you need to build out that piece to complete this these three matters and stand up a working loop with an AI flywheel running in the middle of it. Or maybe you could make one, but maybe what you've got and the relationship set or application could make one, but it needs something you can't build or access. That's a real impetus towards M&A. These are all just starting points for strategy. Many can't be appraised without going to market. Fortunately, we're in a great time to do that and get feedback of your own, to calibrate your value and better understand your position and your options for building value from where you are.
Thank you for that, Elon, and also to Tim and Jiren. Excuse me. We've covered a lot of territory today. So as we try and draw this discussion to a close, let me try and summarize what I think are some of the more important takeaways from today's session, and I'll augment these with some of my own observations. Some of these points may be obvious and perhaps some less so. First, an increasing body of use cases suggests that AI is delivering real value to serious adopters and can be a powerful force for disruption. And as a result, investment in AI is growing fast, both through internal R&D and through M&A. Acquisition of AI-enabled and AI-enabling technology is growing the fastest, at a compound 80% plus per year according to some sources. So that means that the smart AI entrepreneur should be growing his or her company with a clear exit plan in mind. Who's going to be the logical buyer, and why are they going to buy you? Second, AI adoption outside of tech is still at an early stage. This is creating a significant capabilities gap between those best positioned to disrupt and those most likely to be disrupted. Unfortunately, AI is dependent on a solid digital foundation, and often the need to train AIs on unique specific data sets means that there'll be few shortcuts available to late adopting firms. So for these firms, the message is you need to start acquiring and refining technological capabilities right now. And the quickest way, of course, is through M&A. Third, for potential sellers, this is the best market we've seen in which to secure high strategic valuations, with the large tech companies actively buying AI startups, not just to acquire technology or clients, but to secure qualified talent. Of course, the pool of AI experts is still quite small, and the tech giants have hired many of them. So acqui-hiring, as it's called, has become commonplace, with companies paying a recruiting premium. But it's worth keeping in mind that some buyers may even use that as a strategy to lower valuations in this hot market. Fourth, any advantage still maintained by small AI innovators is likely to be fleeting. With later adopting buyers aggressively using M&A to catch up, small innovators will have little choice but to grow rapidly in order to remain independent and successful. This means they'll have to invest aggressively, so they need to make sure that they're well capitalized. The alternative will be to partner or risk being marginalized. Fifth, if your company is in the AI enablement rather than the AI-enabled space, your window for securing liquidity at strategic valuations is likely to be limited. While the opportunity to enable AI extends M&A possibilities beyond AI-focused companies and even analytics companies, only the first few companies supplying unique data or unique ways to get data are likely to continue to fetch a premium, and Elon's gone into this at quite some depth. The implication here is that you need to secure AI-enabling data sets that are unique and protected by barriers built around specific levels of expertise. And finally, enabled verticals may be a potential refuge to hold out for the next buying cycle. Functionally, AI technologies are finding applications across the value chain, but with some parts of the value chain getting more attention than others. And typically, firms tend to adopt AI technologies affecting the part of their value chain that's closer to their core businesses. So as a result, some functions tend to lag behind, and these verticals represent later stage AI opportunities. So if a company misses this wave and is smart, it may still be able to catch the next. And so that concludes the formal part of today's discussion. And so at this point, I'd like to open the session to questions. Well, we've got one already. So maybe, Elon, you can answer this. Are there any unusual impediments to AI deals?
Now, I'll mention one emerging factor to consider that we're seeing, the platform problem. The technical compatibility with its own AI platform of a buyer, whether built out or just committed to by that company. This has become an increasingly important consideration for large acquirers. It's much like programming languages used to be before APIs and became standardized and web services, etc. These teams in AI are moving so quickly, and they have to balance the overhead of getting your assets and staff working in their systems against the benefits. And yeah, you could always, conceive of things like wrapping them both in an ensemble superstructure, but many of these systems are heading toward custom hardware, so that's not a practical solution in a lot of cases. Ivan?
Thanks, Elon. Here's another. What happened to the desire to use AI to dispense expert adaptive operational control? So I'll grab that one. Actually, we discussed some of this with Jiren's examples. And we are seeing adaptive operational control happening in real time. A situation where you see robots having to navigate, for example, walking on ice and adapt in real time. And we're seeing applications of this to things such as drones, where the new generation of drones are essentially crash-proof because the system can adapt in real time to whatever machinations the user happens to put onto the system. So the desire and the application is still there, and it's really starting to hit the mainstream. Here's one for you, Elon. Do you see the distinctive value of in an AI-based business model service provider to enable, for example, IoT delivery and monetization?
Yes, I believe that you can establish distinctive value in a service provider, especially if it's in a hot market like IoT in particular. Again, the trick there is going to be to set up a situation where you have control of data coming in that lets you put a machine learning system in the middle of a loop where it gets feedback from folks that are evaluating its work as you go. So having a significant, having control of those resources, again, will be the key here. Bootstrapping one of these things up from scratch, unless you've got some sort of competitive advantage in doing so, and I return to established relationships or the possession of a large corpus of data to jumpstart that loop, or you've got a commercial situation that you're building off of a legacy company in some way that helps you bootstrap that more quickly, are going to be key to that. The other key to the value of that is going to be its defensibility. So that defensibility can be IP, but primarily it's going to be that you've assumed some position in the marketplace there that nobody else can come after you with. And that's not going to be just an idea of applying AI to a particular field that broad. There are too many folks thinking of that already. Now, if you've got a niche within that area, I think this is the portion of the M&A wave where you've got to look at specialization like that as a way to differentiate if you don't have some other way to defend your turf.
Thanks, Elon. We've got time for one more. So actually, I'm going to launch this one at you again. How do business models need to change as a result of AI disruption and the rise of platform economies?
Well, I think that is a big question that we are all grappling with at this point in time.
That's why I sent it to you.
We know. Yeah, thanks, Ivan. I appreciate it. I'm certainly thinking about it. We're having conversations about it here at Quorum every week. And overall, our society is trying to get a hold of this. The models themselves, I think we're building from from the bottom up. We recognize now the machine learning flywheel model that I've been describing, and our panelists have this feedback loop system as being an essential component of the companies that are going to more efficiently yoke AI to their business model to move it forward more quickly in the future. Other means to do that, I think will come at a higher level than that, and I don't think we've got them in sight yet, but we're beginning to see glimpses on the horizon. Again, I compare it to SaaS and how, as the first SaaS products came out, and we didn't see where all that was going to lead to, and there is a tipping point in terms of adoption where things roll on to the next one. It often follows a cascade, a wave of M&A. We're seeing that right now, which followed a technological innovation, and that came before too. So there's my quick attempt to grapple with that, Ivan.
Yeah, that is a tough and very big question. I'll try and add a bit of an observation to that
Please.
As well before we go to the close, and that's that because of the nature of machine learning, deep learning, I think we're going to start to see an economic shift towards outcome-based pricing. So I think we're going to start to see people paying for value, and this needs to get reflected in their business models. So people are going to pay for outcomes. They're not going to pay for, I think the number of seats anymore. They're going to pay for the fact that you've managed to get, 15% or 50% improvement in the outcome of a particular area that the machine learning is being applied to. So that's my 2 cents worth. That's all the time we have for questions today, unfortunately. So please feel free to reach out to me at ivanr@Quorum Group, and we'll try and answer any other questions you may have. We have a list of these, and we'll definitely get back to you. So thank you all for joining us today, with a special thank to both our panelists and, of course, you too, Elon. That ends today's session, and I hope you all have a great remainder of the day.
We hope you enjoyed today's online symposium. If you have any questions not answered, please submit them to info@wfs.com. We look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming live events in a city near you. To register for these live events, view upcoming webcast topics, or hear rebroadcasts of this or other Market Spotlight events, please go to wfs.com. Thank you for attending today's webcast.